Welcome to the Family Banking Blueprint podcast. This show is for women who put family first, value their faith, and work hard, yet they were never shown how to multiply their money without sacrificing their lives. This isn't about the hustle or the get rich quick. It's about opportunity, decisions, and building a family bank that buys you time, flexibility, options, and family adventures. Here we talk about real estate, passive income, and the beliefs that come even before the first investment. Let's talk about what that looks like.
Hi, friends. Kristen Kingsbury here. Hey, this year going into 2026, I wanted to take the Family Banking Blueprint book and I wanted to just bring it to you in a different capacity and bless people in a way that they could listen on their way to work and just build and touch more lives. So you are the first listeners to episode number 1 of the Family Banking Blueprint podcast, and I appreciate you guys being here. I was thinking, we are the first Monday of January 2026, and something that happens in January, obviously, New Year's Eve, right? Like everybody comes along and they've all got these big goals and big plans, and often we run well with them for a week or two and then we start to fall off. And I was thinking, so often people set these really big plans to invest or to, buy real estate, build passive income, be better financially. And really, what I find time and time again that stops them is the very first step gets missed. The step where everything else, it's the foundation of everything else. You can go to all of the YouTube channels, you can go to all of the classes, you can take all of the notes, you can read all of the books. But if you don't have the belief that it can be you, it's probably not going to be. So I'm going to start today and I want to talk to you about this saying that just rings true to me so much, that if you believe you can or you can't, you're right. That's kind of scary if you think about it. Believing that you can or that you can't often is what all other things stem from, right? If you don't believe that it can be you, you'll never get started. If you don't believe that it can be you, you won't go become a student of it. If you don't believe that it can be you, then it will never become. And I find that there's a couple of reasons why people don't believe that it can be them. And so I'm going to go over a couple of different reasons. But number one is I hear a lot of people say, yeah, but Kristen, I was never taught this. And I know that to be true. I know that, you may have had irresponsible parents that were never good with money. I just want to squash that belief in you that because you had irresponsible parents that you don't get to become. You don't get to become wealthy. You don't get to be financially sound. That's probably one of the reasons why I chose to become financially sound and why I chose to build wealth and learn about money is I remember the first days of school, my mom would get so excited and max out all the credit cards on school clothes. And, I remember without going into great detail, there was years of living in dangerous situations because my mom couldn't afford to live by herself on her own income. And I know that that is true of lots of moms out there, lots of business owners. Many people are in bad situations and bad relationships because they're dependent on a second source of income, and they can't envision themselves leaving. They can't picture that they could be free of that because they are stuck in the idea that they need that other person. One of the things that I always am so grateful for is a period of time when my mom was raising us as a single mother. Instead of being in a relationship with somebody that was unhealthy, there were years where her best friend was our roommate, and the two ladies raised kids together. And so as I grew up, had a really, really great friend who is still a great friend 45 years later. Oh my gosh, I just told you I was 45. But 45 years later, because two women who maybe weren't making it financially on their own decided we don't need a relationship to do this. We can do this together as friends. We could be roommates, we could raise kids, and we could trade off responsibilities. So they did that. And that was just such an awesome way as children to be in a safer space, to have two people that cared about you, that were there with their eyes on you. But there was times in life also that that wasn't the decision, right? There was relationships that were messy, and there was things that were just not healthy for kids or for her to live in, simply because she didn't know and hadn't been taught by parents how to manage money or build generational wealth. And so oftentimes I hear, yeah, Kristen, I didn't grow up with it. My parents weren't financially savvy. I wasn't taught it. There was no information for me. And I get that. I get that. But I want you to stop right now from thinking that that's an excuse to keep you from moving forward. Because today we have all the information right at our fingertips. You have mentors that you can build relationships with. That's not a good excuse going forward. So let's squash that. You never were taught it. Cool. You can be taught it now. Secondly, I hear people say a lot, you know, they don't necessarily say it, but they think it. They come from scarcity, and they're always worried about, like, oh, well, what if I invest and I lose? What if? And instead of always coming from scarcity and thinking you don't have enough to get started, you've got to start thinking of what if. You've got to start thinking of stewardship and changing your thoughts from scarcity to stewardship. So instead of thinking you don't have enough, start thinking, if I had a little, what could it become? Um, I use the example of, kids getting started. I've got a scenario going right now where a couple $100s a month goes into a little Robinhood account for my kiddos that goes to the S&P 500. It's not hard. It's not complicated. It's very simple. I have it on an automatic system, which I would recommend. And very quickly, it's growing. And in very short amount of time, it's almost to the point where it could be a down payment on a house by the time my son is old enough to move out and buy a house. What a great blessing. And it came from just making a few different habits and automating a system that took it out of sight, out of mind, out of my account. And so I say that because it could be your kids that you're building this for. It could also be yourself, that maybe you just have an automatic system, out of sight, out of mind, a little bit of money every single month going to something that's compounding and growing that can become something bigger in the future. And if you shift your thought from I don't have enough to what can that become, and start thinking of stewardship, who can I bless with that? How can I build bigger with that? All of the sudden you start to generate some courage, because many of us have been brainwashed to think that money is evil. It's selfish. It's greedy. Money is the root of all evil, is what we hear so often. And the truth is that money is not evil. Money just exposes who you already are. So money is not evil. Money is a tool. It amplifies your character and who you already are. So if you are giving, if you are loving, if you are a multiplier, if you are a builder, it's not evil. It's going to grow faster. It's going to bless faster. You're going to be able to give to more. It's not greedy. I used to think, I used to think, I used to feel guilty when we did well financially, and when we started building wealth, I would feel guilty because maybe other people didn't have what I had, or maybe other people couldn't do what I was doing. And I would start feeling guilty about it. And then I realized I can offer little opportunities that help them to build too through my building. So as I generated wealth, and as I built wealth, and as I invested, I could offer a job opportunity to somebody that would then bless their family and provide them an opportunity, number one, to learn how to invest, learn what we were doing just by being in the environment, but also to increase their income by giving them opportunities. So instead of it being greedy or selfish, it was I had to shift my thinking to it was actually an opportunity and a blessing for somebody else, which then made me want to go earn more, build more, create more, multiply more, so that I could bless even more. Um, because if you think about it, what you believe impacts your actions. If you don't believe that it can be you, and if you believe that it's greedy and you believe that it's selfish, I'm betting that probably nothing good is going to come of it, right? You're not going to go build more so that you could bless more. And so you have to start with changing your thoughts.
If today's episode helped you to think differently about money, read the Family Banking Blueprint. It'll walk you through the exact framework that we use to build your family's wealth. And remember, faith first, family always, and don't forget to get some assets.
Because what you believe, it impacts your actions, which your actions are what create impact. So I see a lot of wonderful, wonderful humans out in the world that really want to make a big impact. And this is part of the reason I wanted to start this podcast in the beginning is I see all these wonderful hearts that are out there in the world wanting to just do God's work and go be amazing people and go bless other people in a world that can often look dark and gloomy. And they just want to go be the light, but they will go be available. Their calendars are free to do it. And yet they're like, but Kristen, we can't fund it. Several times I've been to conferences where there's groups of people who've committed their lives to going to high schools and talking about suicide prevention. There's, groups of people who are just doing incredible things in the world, and yet they can't. They have the will, they have the desire, they have the support and the team, but they don't have the finances. And so as I was writing this book and as I was thinking about this podcast, my goal really was to go empower those people to change the thoughts the thoughts of it can't be me. I need donations. I have seen people rely on donations and donations dry up to where people had to give up their passions and had to give up the light that was inside of them that was going to bless other people. And so you just have to start and back up and remember you have to start with believing that it's you, because your belief impacts your actions and your actions are what create impact in the world. So rather than overthinking it, rather than waiting for the perfect time, you've got to change your identity. So number 3 is change your identity. You have to shift your identity from becoming the borrower who's, oh, I got to use the credit card. Oh, I've never been in the green. I've always been in the red, to a different identity, because owners have options, right? When you own things, you have equity in things. When you have equity in things, you can use your equity to open up opportunities. And when you're the borrower, you're always slave to the lender. If their rates change, if they take away their credit, you're always slave to somebody else who's controlling you. But if you have equity in things, then you can build opportunities for yourself and for the people around you. So changing your perspective from I'm a borrower to I'm an owner and I'm a builder and I'm a saver and I'm a multiplier. Because right now, what many of you are thinking is you are consumers and you need more and you don't have enough. And if you just had this thing, but the truth is no matter how many more things you have, there's still going to be another thing. So get out of the consumerism, stop spending money on things that aren't going to bless your future and aren't going to change generations that come after you, and start being the builder, generating more income, the saver. Stop spending on that and put it away, put it in places and vehicles that multiply, and stop being that consumer and being a creator, because ownership of things creates that equity, and that equity creates opportunity, and opportunity changes generations. I think to myself, if I wouldn't have made the decision, and I say it that clearly because that's all it is it's a decision to invest, a decision to build wealth. It's just deciding. It's not waiting for it to be perfect. It's making a decision that it can be for you, and that changing your identity to I am becoming this and I am this, instead of just reserving it for all the people around you. But ownership changes generations. I think about a time, and I'll give you an example of a time when I really wanted to own a mobile home park. And I tell this story a lot because it was so simple and it literally making the decision changed everything for me. Wanted to own a mobile home park because I had heard that they were great assets to own and that the passive income was wonderful. And, there was a lot of reasons why owning a mobile home park just seemed like a great next step. Not next step, because I didn't have the money to buy a mobile home park. I didn't have a clue about how to own or operate a mobile home park. I didn't have a clue about where in the world would the money come from if I had found one, but I spoke the goal out loud to people around me, and the people around me heard opportunities and they brought them to me. And I got a phone call one day from one of my students who was on my team at the time, my real estate team. And she said, Kristen, I saw a lead on Facebook. The lady wants to sell her mobile home park here in the Prescott area. And I thought maybe you want to call her and see if you could list it or if you could buy it. And I thought to myself, how in the world would I buy a mobile home park? I don't have the money to buy a mobile home park. Those things are probably expensive. But maybe I can list it. But I don't know the first thing about listing a mobile home park. I've never had a mobile home park listed before. And I just had all these things in my head. But I stopped myself and I changed my thoughts from scarcity and I can't and it's not for me. And I said, but what if you can? And what if you did? And what if there was a way to work it out? And what if it changed your life forever? So if you look at what if you fail or what if you win, which has the greater blessing for you? And I'm like, you know what? I might call this lady and she might tell me, you don't know a freaking thing about what you're talking about. And I'm going to go list with somebody else and I might lose the listing. That was the worst thing that could happen is she could say, no, I could lose the listing. It would be some income that I would lose. But what if she said yes? And what if she sold it to me? What would that do? And I started thinking about that and I'm like, wow, this isn't one opportunity that would change my life. It would create income forever for my kids. It would create college funds. It would create financial well being for us in the future when we want to travel or when we're not actively working anymore. And I thought, well, the benefit of asking far outweighs the risk of maybe losing a listing. So I called the lady and I just asked her questions. I just asked her, what makes you want to sell? And she was a real estate agent too. And, she had some background and she had some health problems that she needed some money up front, but she actually kind of didn't really want to get rid of all the passive income. She was happy with the income that it was bringing in. When we looked at the numbers on paper, what I said to her, hey, I have a small amount of money I can give you up front that will help you with your medical bills, and then I can pay you payments on it. And her and I worked out a strategy and a seller financing that would allow her to still have the passive income, but allow me to give her a chunk of money up front that had come from those little savings that I had told you about. And it worked for her because she didn't have to manage it anymore. It would bring her some income for the next several years, and it would also give her a chunk of money to pay off this medical debt that was stressing her out. And so she said yes, and I said yes, and we moved forward on this transaction that has become a great, great blessing for my family. And the reason that I go back to that is sometimes just the little actions start to create the confidence to do it again and again. I was no expert investor when I made that call. I didn't even know how I was going to figure it out. But I thought, well, what's the harm in asking some questions and just seeking to understand what this lady's needs are and how I can help her? And just really changing my identity to what if it worked? What if I win? Those little actionable steps are what create confidence. And through confidence and clarity, it starts to just compound and build. And then you have an entire portfolio built and you just can keep going and keep blessing and keep growing. But I tell you, a lot of times I hear you guys say the fourth thing that I want to tell you about is, "Well, I don't have the confidence. Maybe after I learn, I'll have the confidence." And the truth is there's always things to learn. Um, find yourself great mentors, involve yourselves in their lives, watch how they do it, read lots of books, become a student of wealth. But remember that confidence doesn't come before clarity. You have to first know what it is that you're looking for, what it is that you want, and then start taking those small actionable steps I was clear I wanted the mobile home park. I didn't have a clue how that was all going to come to fruition. I took the actionable little step, the only thing that I could figure out to do, make the phone call, talk to the lady, hear her out so that I could have more information. But those little steps turned into wins, and each little win turns into confidence. I'm sitting here on a podcast with you right now with a book that I've written about this whole concept of wealth building, not because I'm the most genius investor you'll ever meet, but because my small actionable steps took my clarity of what I wanted. I wanted a financial future that would bless my family and bless other people. And every time I took a little step and I got those wins, it created confidence. And as confidence, clarity, and action came, wealth started to be generated and was built. All right, friends, that's it for today. But remember, faith first, family always, and don't forget to get some assets. I'll see you next time.